evening. And as we open this meeting this evening, it is with heavy hearts that the board wishes to recognize the passing of one of our students from Carmont High School, Colin Walker. Although Colin is no longer with us, his memory will live forever in our district. We'll remember him as the joyous, funny, kind, and adventurous kid that he was. A natural athlete that enjoyed outdoor activities like skiing and snowmobiling, that always went out of his way to make others feel comfortable and at ease. His life clearly touched so many, and we're grateful to have had him as part of our district family. Okay, welcome to our public session. Members of the public wishing to address the board may indicate their desire to do so during the relevant portion of the agenda. Persons wishing to provide comments on an agendized item should raise their electronic hand in the Zoom platform to address the board when that item is under consideration. Persons wishing to address the board on matters not on the agenda should raise their electronic hand in the Zoom platform during the public comment agenda item. Please be advised that board members cannot respond to comments regarding a non-agendized item. When it is the speaker's turn to comment, the board president will call on that person. Staff will unmute the speaker. All speakers are requested to state their full name and affiliation with the district, if any, at the beginning of their comments when they're invited to speak. Board policy ordinarily limits the time to be devoted to any single agenda topic to 10 minutes, and individual speakers are ordinarily limited to 3 minutes. If the board decides to expand the amount of time to be allocated to a particular agenda item because many speakers wish to address that item, the board may reduce the time allocated to individual speakers to 2 minutes, 90 seconds, or 1 minute as appropriate in order to permit more speakers to comment. The board will announce the amount of time to be allocated to each speaker before public comment on each particular agenda item begins. For that, we need to have the hands up of everybody who will speak and be recognized. The time allocated to each speaker will then be displayed on the Zoom screen. When a speaker's time has expired, staff will mute the speaker. All right, can we have a roll call?
Student Trustee Stead. Student Trustee Stead.
Here.
Student Trustee Osuna.
Here.
Trustee Thompson.
Here.
Trustee Stevenson.
Here.
Trustee Ginn.
Here.
Vice President Dubois.
Here.
President Sarver.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Okay, this moves us along to approval of the agenda. Does anybody on the board have a change to make to the agenda or a motion for approval?
I'll move approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. It is
Aye.
unanimous. Okay, the agenda is approved. This moves us along, to the report out on closed session. And we took one action in closed session by a vote of 5-0 unanimously. The Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 2021-2022-3. brings us along to agenda item 7, the approval of the consent agenda. The board action to approve the following items is taken simultaneously with one motion, which is not debatable and requires unanimous roll call for passage. The action indicated on each item is deemed to have been considered in full and action taken as worded therein. Only members of the board and the superintendent may remove items from the consent agenda. Members of the public may provide comments at the start of the consent agenda item, which may convince a board member or the superintendent to remove an item for further discussion. The motion will be to waive the reading of the consent agenda, accept the reports, adopt the resolutions, and approve other items. Do we have any requests by board members of the superintendent to remove any items? Or do we have any comments from the public asking for removal of an item? Okay, seeing no hands go up, I would welcome a motion for approval.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I
I'll
will
second.
I'm going to give it to Trustee Dubois. Was that a tie? Okay, with that, can we have a roll call?
Student trustee Stead,
Yes.
student trustee Asuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson,
Yes.
trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Jin,
Yes.
vice president Dubois,
Yes.
and president Sarver.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. All right, that moves us along to agenda item 8, our special recognitions. Superintendent Williams, please take it away.
Good evening, everyone. I am excited to bring to us our recognition on this wonderful Wednesday. The first recognition will come to Happy Campers. The Happy Campers at Carmont provides childcare for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers on the Carmont High School campus at a discounted rate, 30% for our SUHSD employees. This program supports our goal to assist our district staff with the cost of living expenses and to provide a local childcare option for our staff who travel from all of the Bay Area. While this has been a challenging year for everyone, their classrooms remain welcoming and inviting for our families, and we appreciate their partnership. And so we'd like to just say kudos to them and thank you for supporting our families and serving our students and our children of our staff members. Thank you so kindly. You will receive a certificate for your partnership. Thank you. Our second acknowledgement, yay! We have a student from the Trace program, woo! And we have JJ Sanchez. He is a graduate of Woodside High School and entered into Trace last year. He mastered his skills in the APE aquatics program, including swimming techniques, kayak fundamentals, and most importantly, life vest components, which is crucial for success. Although JJ uses a wheelchair during the day because of an orthopedic impairment, when at the pool, JJ can fit on a life vest and teaches fellow students how to float, turn, and swim with life vest on. JJ quickly started to emerge as an effective role model for other students in our sessions, and especially students with mobility impairments. We'd like to recognize JJ and his leadership, also his support of his peers, and just doing a phenomenal job and continuing to keep excellence at the forefront for Sequoia Union High School District. To all the teachers, to his family and friends, we salute you, JJ. Thank you so much and congratulations. Yay!
Now, I do see that Ms. Civikas is actually here in Zoom. And I wonder if you have a few words you'd like to say.
I mean, I'm just so thankful that you guys invited me. It's so sweet and I really appreciate it, and am continue to be so happy for the relationship that we've established, and am really thankful and so happy with the enrollment this year. We have a lot more students than we had even before COVID. So I don't know how that success is happening at this time, but I am welcoming all of it and really appreciate your kind words. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Yes, and we did receive an email from you
Yes.
earlier in the week that sparked a little bit back and forth conversation.
Yes.
That's reflected in our correspondence that we'll get to a little bit later on as well. And it's been tremendous having you there on the campus and making a difference for our staff and community.
Thank you. And any of you are welcome to give us a call and come on by. We'd be happy to show you, everything that we've been doing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move along then to our student trustee comments. And I know that both of you are going to be presenting to us later on this evening, but this is a good time to hear what else is on your minds.
Hello. Well, hello. So school is ramping up and students are beginning to feel the pressure of the combination of schoolwork, athletics, extracurricular activities, and for many, myself included, college applications. As such, I would like to encourage flexibility with deadlines and understanding that students are under immense pressure just in a normal school year, along with the shock to the system of returning to in-person school. I would also like to encourage the district that in future years tries to keep in mind Jewish high holy holidays when making the schedule. This district has a sizable Jewish population, and on holidays like Yom Kippur, when school is still scheduled, students are asked to either choose their religion or academics. Thank you. And I will now pass it on to Carlos.
Well, I have not prepared as eloquent a statement as student trustees did, but I would like to reiterate everything she said. This is my first time being here with you all, and I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very grateful to get to know all of you and look forward to continuing the work that Isabel and I will do on behalf of our fellow students, and you'll hear from us later. So I'll stop now.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Carlos. This is indeed the first time you've been able to join us. We're very happy to have you here. Isabel has established a great presence early in this school year, and we are glad to be doing a twofer now. Okay, we move along to agenda item 10, comments from the Sequoia District Teachers Association, SDTA, and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME. And I believe that Grace Horton, our AFSCME representative, is in the process of being promoted to participant. So Grace, if you can unmute and talk to us.
Yep, here I am. Thank you for switching me over. I want to say good evening to you all. I'm going to keep my video off just to increase connectivity here. And I do want to I do have a positive report. There are I don't know why I have freeway brain right now. I'm sorry. There are evidences of paras that are being hired. So I want to thank you for hearing us out, and maybe I will ask next time for advocacy from the certificated staff so we can see if we can get food service staffed. Seems like that turned out pretty good. Anyways, moving along, I also want to say that this is our chapter is in the middle of elections for chapter president, and I'd like to say that this will be my last meeting. I did not run for chapter president for next term. We have 2 candidates, and this week will be the last week that our members have the opportunity to vote. And so in 2 weeks, I will be back to introduce the new chapter president. There will be many elements that I will miss in serving as chapter president, but I step away equipped with tons of skills and lots of knowledge. I have enjoyed immensely working with all of you and learning in the capacity of serving the membership. It has been a great joy, and I have done it with great pride. And yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Unmute. I'm going to need to leave and come back.
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
That's okay. My screen indicates that I'm still muted and my Zoom is visually not responding to me quite right. So I'll wing it. I'm sorry about that. Okay, then we move on to Ida Salvatore, representing the Sequoia District Teachers Association.
Hello. I was stunned by Grace's announcement that she's stepping down. And so I will definitely look forward to meeting whoever tries to fill her shoes in the coming year. I was also pleased to hear that AFSCME has gotten good news about potential para hirings. My comments were going to focus really on the effects that staffing concerns are having on our students. We are seeing that our students aren't getting the services that they need in some areas because of the difficulty we've had hiring paras and instructional aides. At some sites, hiring qualified teachers to fill positions that are still vacant. And, beyond that, because we have the additional issue of quarantine and people who have properly stayed away from work when they've had COVID-like symptoms or if they've tested positive. We've seen the need for there to be, more of a backstop, more of a sub pool, not only for teachers, though definitely we need a growing sub pool for teachers, but that right now, some of our sites aren't able to comply with what the district has set out in its reopening plan, because our custodial staff, if we have people who are out for health reasons, there is no backup for them. And so where our restrooms are supposed to be cleaned continually throughout the day, we're seeing some that aren't being cleaned at all on a given day. And so we are concerned about that. And we know that staffing concerns are not unique to our school district nor to our industry. And so We hope that the district is exploring all avenues and venues for trying to find folks to fill those vacant positions. We were very pleased. Our bargaining unit members are very pleased that the district was able to get an agreement with Worksite Labs and get everything set up so that on-site testing started this week at Sequoia. The folks were on campus yesterday, and my colleagues who availed themselves of the service said that while there was a little stumbling block of needing to know your employee number, which is not something that we all have in our Rolodex of personal information at the ready, that the scheduling an appointment was easy, was quick, getting in, getting out for testing. A bunch of my colleagues did it at their lunch break and still had plenty of time to eat their lunch and prepare for their afternoon classes. So that seemed to go well, and hopefully that support will also help with contact tracing and other concerns, and will help unburden our health aides and district nurses. SDTA is looking forward to finally beginning the round of contract negotiations for the 2021-2022 school year. We have an introductory meeting set for next Tuesday, and then negotiation sessions beginning mid-October. So we are very much looking forward to that and hoping that we can reach a speedy settlement. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this moves us along to public comment. We'll begin with correspondence. Which I'm opening up on my computer currently. There we go. Okay. And in correspondence, since the last meeting, we've tracked 10 pieces of correspondence from the listed correspondence. And I will go through that portion that applies to public comment. A request that we identify the union representatives and the full name of the union at each meeting, which we've done, and limit their speaking time to 3 minutes. Next, that excessive heat in many classrooms during the fall and the spring is both a health hazard and an impediment to learning. This is exacerbated by the measures being taken to manage the pandemic. Please support a bond measure to upgrade air conditioning and address this issue. Next one is please send correspondence from the superintendent to Samtrans, as well as preparing a board resolution encouraging restoration of the full bus route 295, which would serve more than 15 public schools within Sequoia district boundaries. As we heard earlier, the Happy Campers group expresses their gratitude for the opportunity to provide childcare on the Carlmont campus, and is excited that high school students also volunteer their time at the facility. Happy Campers is eager to support any more formal internship opportunities as part of any future early childhood education program in the district. Request to please take Jewish holidays into account, as already noted, when setting the district calendar. For reference, the first day of Rosh Hashanah next year will be Monday, September 26, 2022, and Yom Kippur will be on Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. And finally, the Gray Star development team is interested in setting up a meeting with Sequoia district leaders to discuss the Menlo Portal and Menlo Uptown projects. We'll be looking forward to taking advantage of that. I will return to the other portion of the comments when we get to the agenda item 15.3, the continuity of learning. We do have correspondence specific to some of the things we'll be discussing there. Okay, and this allows us to move on to public comment. Again, this is for items that are not agendized, and we normally limit it to 3 minutes per speaker and 10 minutes overall. So I do see one hand is up already. And any other speakers for public comment, please raise your hands. Otherwise, we'll hear just from Abby Corman for 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Abby Corman. I'm a teacher at Menlo Atherton. I've been attending board meetings regularly since about March or April. And in this public comment, I have questions about public comment. I'm curious about what happened with AB 361 and the Brown Act. Was it extended? What is our plan for board meetings moving forward? I was pleased to hear the trustees shared an opinion of wanting as much public comment as possible and that we were leaning toward the hybrid model presented last board meeting. But I'd like an update where we are, as it was a substantial topic of conversation last meeting and might change things for the next upcoming board meeting. I'd also like to follow up on the question around written public comment. I believe that we need an option for the public to provide written comment if they cannot attend in person, as I am. But I do not believe that all who write an email to the board are asking their comments to be saved to the public record. It's not made clear anywhere on our district website that when you email the board, it will be done, so it will be made public. I think we need two different processes, as I've heard mentioned by multiple trustees, an option for the public to send correspondence to board members, and then a clear place for the public to write written comment to be saved to the record. Thanks.
Okay, and as public comment, the board is not able to deliberate or respond, but I think we may be able to touch on that on the continuity of learning section. Okay. All right, and those were all the comments we had this time. So we will move to our first information item, the back to school update, the student's perspective. And we are very excited to be hearing from our student trustees and really get the student perspective on what the start of the school year is like.
So this is our Sequoia Union High School District reopening, the student perspective from the SAC, which is the Student Advisory Committee.
Again, I'm Carlos Osuna.
And I'm Isabel Stead.
Just a quick quote we threw in there. And then, so before we begin, we just want to talk about who's represented in this presentation and kind of what it looks like. That's feedback we're getting back. So you can see here, SAC stands for Student Advisory Council / Committee. And we have representatives from every site in our district. At least the schools that provided us with representatives, we hope to increase that if we can. You can see there that we're very Carlmont heavy and we're happy to be so. We'd like equal representation, ideally, but we're happy to hear every one of our colleagues in the district. And yeah, you can see Middle College, Carlmont, MA, Sequoia, Woodside, EPA, Academy, and Tide are all represented.
So kind of The student reaction to school community as we've gone back is that although there is lunchtime games in student sections, it would be nicer to increase inclusivity both across racial lines and socioeconomic lines in those activities. There are also student-run events such as homecoming, sports, and clubs, which are going very well to bring students into the community and make them feel like they are valued. Schools are also offering mental health outlets and resources. And while this is great, it was also very important to encourage that students who use these are encouraged to do so and not just kind of have it there as an option, that students are actively encouraged to use them. Multiple resources are being used for orienting new students, such as freshmen or transfers. This is a great way to help bring students into the community and help welcome freshmen and make them feel at home in their respective campuses. And so far in the school year, student involvement is generally high.
On COVID-19 protocols, there were opinions that would like to be shared. So overall, students are mostly following mask rules and observing social distancing, despite some sites not requiring that outside, at least inside they are required. Some students feel that outdoor activities such as rallies and lunchtime games are risks at the moment with the Delta variant surging. And then again, masks not being necessarily required outside, and that is largely the venue for a lot of these events. And there are also concerns about teachers not enforcing mask rules in their classrooms, or some students choosing not to wear their mask and causing disruptions in classrooms. Now, this isn't to say that this is happening a lot. Actually, we heard a lot of positive feedback about teachers being very strict about mask wearing inside the classroom and offering breaks to those who wish to remove their masks outside where it's not to the detriment of the other students.
So in terms of what's working, as Carlos previously mentioned, teachers are giving mask breaks for students if they feel overwhelmed or overheated and just need a moment outside without their masks. And students are also feeling a stronger sense of community through their school's efforts to foster a community environment. And students also have support resources such as SOS at Woodside, which have made students feel like their mental health is being prioritized, which are all great things within our community.
And sorry, just to go back one last slide, acronyms are something that confuse me all the time. For those of you that don't know what SOS is, that's students offering support. As a Woodside student, I can say that this has been a great help in our community, in our district, at least at our site, and it continues to be so. So moving on, we have some direct student feedback that we'd like to share, just 2 points, but we think that they're very important that they be heard. One of them was that lunch lines are excessive. Students wait a majority of their breaks for food. Simple options can and should be explored to fix this. Now, we weren't given ideas from this particular person on what they think would be better in terms of, ideas to fix this issue. I'm sure if we talk to them, we would hear great suggestions, so we plan on doing so. And then teachers seem super stressed, and it's reflecting on their teaching and attitude. Now, our goal here is to provide quality education to every student in our district. And again, this isn't reflective of the majority of the district. A lot of students are saying that their education and their teachers' attitudes toward teaching has been very, very good, especially coming back out of this pandemic, which we're still not at the end of, but we're getting better with. So yeah, and I think we have some more information to share here.
But on the note of student workload, which I touched in my comments, students feel that teachers should be more lenient on the workloads they're assigning, and generally that a lot of the workload is overwhelming, both in terms just in generally, but also compared to last year when the workload was much lighter. And some students are struggling to balance their interests outside of school with their schoolwork. As a district, we should really be supporting students having lots of extracurricular opportunities. And while we do this, it is also important to support them to be able to get their schoolwork done and also take advantage of all the extracurricular opportunities this district provides.
So while we didn't have recommendations to one of those last quotes, we do have recommendations in a more general way. Some students would like to see more mental health resources, with students being encouraged to take advantage of them. Unfortunately, and this is not the fault of the district, but it's just kind of a social stigma that mental health is kind of a scary topic to talk about. As student trustees, we're supposed to remain neutral, but I think it's not too biased to say that we do think mental health is a huge component of a student's experience at their school, especially in high school. They'd like to encourage teachers to be flexible and aware of the difficult academic transition, which I think shouldn't be much of an issue. I think we all understand the gravity of the situation that we're in. Again, finding ways to keep lunch lines shorter, such as hiring more food services staff or creating additional lines. And that obviously has to be dealt with at a site-by-site basis. And then reiterate the importance of proper mask wearing. Unfortunately, there are some times that maybe the masks slip, or I mean, we like to think that that's the case all the times. But yes, there are instances where mask wearing isn't appropriate, such as under the nose. So we just like, the folks on SAC would like to remind everybody that that is the case. Please keep it over your nose.
And so the best way to support students is by encouraging and supporting us while we balance school and life outside of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, board member questions and comments. Harry.
Thank you so much for the, could you guys hear me? Thank you so much for the presentation. You know, I think this is a first. And one of the things I've thought about in the past, our superintendents have been part of your SAC meetings, but the board as a whole is not. And so this is such an important way to bring the voice of students to us and our work. So I really appreciate it. And I hope we can do more of this. And your presentation was beautiful. So just two questions. You don't have representation from Redwood, and that's a special population. And as you know, those are often kids that were not successful in our comprehensive high schools. And I think their voice, my dream is to really amplify their voice. And if any thoughts on how to get them involved, and it might even require a little bit of changing, how the SAC operates to be able to include Redwood kids and other kids who are most disenfranchised. So any conversation about that?
Yeah, so I think we will reach out to administration at Redwood, because originally how we get members is we reach out from administration. And so we'll reach out and try and get some members from Redwood because we feel the same way.
And as a follow-up to that, it's a little unrelated, but in terms of representation, actually, when we were doing some of the preliminary planning for this, the membership of SAC, I did, and I'm sure Isabel supports this, we did want a more diverse set of people there. The folks we expect to be there are ASB type students who are very happy to be engaged, but we also wanted students that might not be able to have those resources that students that are more involved would be. So as a stipulation, we asked each site to send AVID representatives as well as their other representatives. So as you all know, AVID is usually home to students who are less fortunate than others. And luckily we did get AVID representatives, and we're actually in the process of getting a few more. So while we do want to prioritize getting more from Redwood, we also are very, very appreciative that we do have that AVID representation on our SAC.
That's great. And then my last question, an issue that I have been concerned about for quite a while as a school board member, as a mom, is substance use and substance abuse, right? It's a problem bigger than our district. But it is a problem. And I'm just wondering if that is a topic that comes up at all at SAC or comes up at all as you guys talk to students, and if you have any thoughts as to whether, and the substance use doesn't happen on campus, right? It happens culturally, right? If there's any discussion about that issue and anything that we might need to know from the students' perspective.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. And yes, there is a sort of a pandemic of sorts going on when it comes to substance abuse. And substance, again, comes in many forms. There's unfortunately, and I'm the type of person that likes to face situations head on. Woodside, we've been called Weedside before. And that's not a reputation you want to carry as a high school, especially public high school. So yes, we've opened up the floor to our members at SAC to offer suggestions. We usually take up a project in years past, SAC, to improve aspects of the district. We have opened it up to students, members, to recommend whatever they'd like to recommend. We've had stuff ranging from some sort of district-wide activity to there was concerns about parking at certain sites. So we do have a very diverse interest in solving issues in our district. In terms of substance abuse, we haven't gotten a chance yet to face that head on. We've only had one meeting, and we are looking into maybe even expanding our meeting times so we're able to touch on many more topics. So I very much do appreciate your concern, your comments, and we'll make that a priority going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, I jumped quickly to board member comments, but we didn't collect public comments yet. So let me do that. I see one of our attendees, Abby Corman, has her hand up.
Hi again, I came prepared. I'll raise my hand again later too, I think. First, I want to say I appreciate the student trustees presentation, and I'm excited to have Trustee Osuna here, but I have been witness to Trustee Stid's comments and questions so far and have really valued her input. I appreciate that this was a survey that took almost all sites into account. I think it probably took a lot of work. It's really well put together. And I'd love to hear from them more, as mentioned by Trustee Dubois. However, I am frustrated that this survey or something similar wasn't administrated by the district yet. We're nearing 2 months on campus. This district would have a much further reach than just 2 students in SAC, a more diverse reach, as mentioned by our student trustees. These are often leadership type students. And I'd like to know how all of our students are feeling. Even still, I actually align with that final recommendation. It's what I'm seeing in my classroom as well. These concerns presented around the mental health and social emotional needs of our students and our teachers. And I'd like to actually ask the board for clarity around what new mental health supports have been put in place after this monumental return from a once-in-a-lifetime event. I have heard, although I don't know this for sure, that there has not been one district-led MTSS, mental health support specialists, or SEL task force meeting this year that convened with multiple sites. I've also heard sites have not seen any new funding toward mental health. I've been told our mental health professionals are seeing more students than ever before and need more resources and more space. For example, I have a student who needs a behaviorist, and I have heard the only one we have in the district has 80 students on her caseload. So her visit to one of my LTEL SPED struggling readers has been pushed back at least a month already. While I know we all value mental health and we do have a long-term MTSS plan, I'm concerned the mental health of our students and staff has not been an immediate financial focus of the district as it needs to be. This has left students and teachers struggling, as we just heard. And I'm asking for a complete accounting of where any funds directed at mental health have been allocated and spent from each site, especially considering our large recent COVID funds. Thank you.
Okay, I don't believe I saw any hands for any other attendee speakers. And I do believe those are questions that are going to be part of the continuity of learning discussion.
Some of those will, yes.
And I did see also that Edith Salvatore has her hand up.
Yes, my name is Edith Salvatore. I am president of the Sequoia District Teachers Association. And what I really appreciated about the presentation was the recognition of the impact that the last 20 months have had on staff as well as on students. And I think what it screams to me is that we need more opportunities for structured conversations between students and teaching staff and other support staff, so that we can both hear what's going on and what could help and what couldn't help, right? Like we hear that it would help student stress levels if we could be more lenient with deadlines and timelines. And then perhaps we could share with students how that raises the stress level of a teacher who can't then schedule for the grading and response time on those assignments because they're coming in at a variety of dates and times. And we can find some middle ground that is going to be helpful and work for both so that nobody's struggling. Or at least we're not struggling as much as we are right now. I think it would be a wonderful opportunity. I know that at Sequoia, we've had a variety of student panels and staff panels, and that continued during our asynchronous Wednesdays last year, so that we can hear what students are thinking from different groups, and students could hear from teachers as well. And I hope that type of thing can continue on all our campuses, but also district-wide. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, you had your hand up, and I think you've got some things to jump in on.
Good evening again. I just wanted to say I really appreciate, as others have echoed, trustees did, and also Asuna, for your work in terms of collecting the data around this information. Also, I wanted to lift that student voice is so important. It builds agency and it allows you to leverage your place in our community. And hearing from you all and firsthand about your perspective helps us to guide our work and also to refine things such as providing more specific mental health support for all of you. The other piece is, I know in meeting with all of you, we discussed diverse voices and bringing multiple voices into the conversation. And you all have done that. And we've started the process. And I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of the conversations that are going to initiate as a result of this presentation this evening. And I just wanted to give you all kudos and know that you have my support. And one idea that we can have is to start a district-wide campaign around some of the issues that you raised. One with the mental health support, the protocols. How might we, from a student perspective, support our peers, our colleagues, in order to continue to create a safe and healthy environment for all. So once again, thank you. Look forward to meeting with all of you again and look forward to having you back for an updated report. Thank you both.
Okay, Shanice.
I wanted to, first of all, thank you all for the report. I'm so excited that both of you guys are here. I believe in student voices. The other piece, there were a couple of things that you spoke to. One, I also am trying to take an impact. I know it's a board meeting. We talk to each other, but there's also people who don't understand, like me before I got on board, what the student advisory committee does and who they advise. So it'd be nice if you can repeat what that is so that people understand in the context of the organization. So that's just one thing. But I heard a couple of things, and hopefully it's okay for me to say this, but I did notice that Redwood wasn't there. And I all schools have leadership, regardless of circumstances, zip codes, whatever. And it's about how do we make sure that they feel like if I show up, am I really going to make a difference, right? Because that's giving up time. And you guys have given up time because it's valuable. But if it didn't pay dividends, money in some ways, if you think about it, or it's fruitful for them, then I don't know if I should give up my time. And so I think part of the advertisement of this is because I know students don't know about this committee, at least from the community that I come from, which is East Palo Alto, Bellhaven. And students don't know that their voices can be raised to this level. And so they don't understand the impact. Therefore, I don't go, as well as people may not recommend. So when I think of Redwood, maybe it's just me, but I think of like Live in Peace and some of the other organizations that have partnered with them to see who is ready for this kind of leadership. I know in my community, the diversification that you guys are looking for in voices are actually raised in the community. They're not necessarily connected to Sequoia Union High School District because they're really embedded in advocacy in their own community around housing, around immigration, around some of these other big topics that are really impacting their families every day. So I really would strongly ask Principal Stephanie Ogden, is that her name? That you ask her, what partners are you working with that can identify some youth that they can also support to be into that leadership space. So I want to put that out there. I also think that there's a couple of things that you all said that stood out to me. I wanted to talk a little bit about the substance abuse issues that is not solely just Sequoia Union High School District. There's actually lots of reports around kids experimenting with marijuana and vaping and all kinds of things just to deal with what is called stress. And so if we're going to prepare our kids for college, it actually blows up in college because then you're not around your mom and dad. So then you have more access. And so there are ways that you all can take up that issue. And one of the things first thing thought about is Sequoia Health District. They're always trying to involve youth and some of the substance abuse and the health and wellness work. I'm sure Javier, I just see your square, Javier, you could talk to him about that and how youth can get involved in that because there is a place on the peninsula for that. And matter of fact, there's so many opportunities for different voices there. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is the underscoring of student and teacher partnership. Edith, I just want to, we're not in the same room. I don't know where you are on the square, but thank you so much for bringing that up. I think that's very important. I know that there's stress. There are things I don't know because I am not a teacher and that's not my gifting. And so I honor teachers, but I wonder what that would look like of what's really necessary so that you learn the core and you're ready for college without having the excessive work just to work. And I do think there needs to be a conversation, not for teachers to defend themselves and not for students to defend themselves, but to say, what is it that really we can do away with for right now, and I still get the content and I'm ready for college. And by the way, it might even help the teacher as well because they're not doing 120 different things, that they're really focusing on the quality of the educational experience. So I wanted to just thank you for those comments. Thank Edith for her comments. And I really think there's a theme about food service. So hopefully that will be something we can talk about in the future. So thank you all very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And I do think that I totally agree with everything you said. And I think we will definitely, Carlos and I probably during this meeting will be emailing the principal at Redwood to try and get some members from that school and the SAC. And then also like having those conversations with teachers about exactly as you said, like what can we do away with to keep the bulk of the learning. So whether that be, standards-based grading, but just like having those conversations to find a good middle ground.
Okay, Chris.
this setup. So I have the unique privilege of being situated right here by you, so I get to see in your eyes and be close to students, which is wonderful. I wanted to use my time actually to underscore what Edith said and Shanice has repeated, with the sense that if it's said 3 times, maybe it'll happen. But which is to say, your message was clear, concise, and compelling, and I think you ought to share it with more people. That it's helpful to us as trustees, but this idea of structured conversations with teachers, I think is probably the most effective thing you can do. I was thinking of other audiences also that would benefit from this. I know you're in communication with our superintendent. That's great. Parent audiences, I think, would appreciate it as well. And to the extent that we can help you with those things, or the cabinet, but maybe the superintendent can help you think of places where you should take this message so it truly has an impact. That said, thank you so much for the presentation.
Dr. Williams, can you please explain SAC, please, and what it is, and where it's in the org?
Yes. And so it's the Student Advisory Committee to the Superintendent in terms of their feedback on how schooling is going, what we can do to improve, what things are going well, what projects we can initiate to support district goals and also initiatives. I would like to underscore that this is their first time. We've had one meeting and they were very conscientious about just about all of the topics that were raised in terms of expanding membership, discussing ways that they can encourage other members from other schools so they can have full district representation of students. And our students had been very conscientious. And I just want them to know it's the first time, and the first time that we've done this, and you've done a remarkable job. And they are planning to take their presentation on the road, if you will, and have conversations with other stakeholders. But I just wanted to underscore their purpose is to advise, and that they have been very conscientious about their work, and also about the points they wanted to raise in this meeting and presenting to the board as the trustees. And then there are also some other things that prevent, and we'll have that conversation later, from them having some other conversations. And so with that, again, I look forward to future meetings. Thank you for your first time. You guys hit the mark today, and know that is nothing but recommendations to you. And thank you so very kindly for being here and serving as representatives for your student peers and friends. Thank you.
And I do, I see a couple of hands up that I think have already spoken, and those are probably ready to go down. But for me, I think one of the things I was most struck with by the presentation was that the issues you raised, both the places where you have really seen good efforts being made in the schools to address issues that are key, and where the issues are still problematic, are the areas that have been at the front of our conversations, and the areas where resources have been going and where intention has been going. And so to me, it's very positive and reassuring to hear you talking about the strength of efforts to build school community. And that, it's really been talked about that this is a year of empathy, a year of community building, a year of healing. And you bring a report that that's the way the school campuses feel to the students so far. And I think that's really, really important. For me, I've attended a lot of the back to school nights. And as I've gone from classroom to classroom and listened in, I've heard the teachers talk to the parents much less about the academics and how the student goes about making the best grade in the class, and much more about the supports that are there to really help the students reconnect with their community and have the sense of support to be able to focus their minds on the academics. And so it is supporting the whole student so that learning is possible. And then the outcome there is for the learning to be as strong as possible this year. And I do think that there is a lot of intentionality around less focus on the very traditional stressors of exactly how the grade is achieved and exactly what percentage of the grading is this test or this written assignment. I've heard a lot of talk about standards-based grading and mastery and multiple opportunities to demonstrate knowledge and understanding. So I do think that not only are our faculty across the district open to conversations about balancing stress and learning and success, but that they're actively engaged in trying to make that difference happen. And every bit of additional feedback and engagement they can get is going to help that happen all the more effectively. I do think we heard themes definitely around places where the staffing impacts and challenges of the pandemic environment are making things be slower and less efficient and more difficult than we want. You know, that really helps us to redouble efforts to address those staffing issues and get things done. And I know, you know, I think there was very little in the report that was wildly surprising to me. It was the issues that we know are there, but it's good to hear that, you know, the general balance is, yeah, the needle is getting moved. We are making differences in these areas, and we just need to keep focused and keep turning. I was also very glad to hear that going along with the health and safety protocols is the norm, is the comfortable way for students to move forward, that there's understanding of the science and the social responsibility and the ways in which all of us in the education community can work together to make sure that things stay open and safe and as familiar as possible. There are always going to be hiccups along the way. There are always going to be individual dissenters or places where things are not enforced as strongly as they could be. And we'll keep working on those as the incidents pop up. But it's a good reinforcement of everything we've seen, that across the district, this is being done well by our staff and by our students. And we're able to stay open and stay healthy. So I want to echo what everybody else has said. I appreciate the work and the presentation and your presence as part of this process. It's been tremendous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I just give one last?
Absolutely.
I want to thank all of you for your time and all of you here on this Zoom that I cannot see. You may just be little squares right now or rectangles, but we appreciate you all being here. And I just want to take a second, and I don't know if there are any students watching, but if there are, I want to speak directly to you. I want to tell you, Isabel and I, we're seniors. We know what it's like. We've had nights where we've sat up and cried and you know, wondered, why is this happening? It gets better, and we are here to make sure it gets better. We are here for you. We are your student trustees, and if there's ever anything you need from us, please do not hesitate to contact us. I would say my phone number on here, but I don't know about the safety of that. But you can find me through Gmail. You can find Isabel through Gmail. I can give you my number there. And yes, please stay safe, stay healthy, wear your mask, and let's make this a great year.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that moves us along then to our public hearing. The public hearing on consideration of adopting resolution number 1696, Sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials.
Thank you, Mr. Sarver. You have the report before you. It is that time of year again where we validate that all students have access to all materials needed for their classes. And I'm happy to report that each of the reports back from our sites verified that they do.
For me, this is one of those reports that every year it comes through and it's nice and clean. And it's easy to take for granted that, oh, this is just a blind rubber stamp. This is a piece of cake. This is no big deal. But this reporting mechanism exists because that quality of availability of resource has not always been something that has been that you can take for granted across the state of California. And it is something that we know we get right year in and year out here, but it's not without work, without effort, without dedication to make sure it's so. So I thank you for once again being able to give us this kind of a clean report and demonstrate that we are on track with the resources that we owe to all of our students.
Thank you for the budget to make it possible.
If are there any comments from the public on this? And if not, and I don't see any board member questions, comments, or a motion of approval for the resolution?
I'll move to approve.
I second.
Okay, excuse me, I jumped out of space here. This is a public hearing. We will adopt it later on. So let me instead open the public hearing. Any members of the public are welcome to provide comments at this point. All right, seeing none, I close the public hearing, and we will come back to this as an action item later on. So I move on to our action item 15.1, the approval of the job description for Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Good evening, board. This item is separating human resources and student services. 15 years ago, the job description was created to put both of the roles in one position. And I think we all can attest to, as heard by many of the comments of our constituents tonight, that the roles have, public schools have moved in a completely different direction in the last 15 years. That employee rights and laws in the state of California have become more complex. Collective bargaining is a major portion of activities that happen in personnel, human resources, and applying the rights that employees have through legal is a major function. Student services, which we'll get to in a moment, is a whole separate division of student needs. As we heard from our students this evening, we heard from parents, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment when we get to the student services portion. So the recommendation is that we have a leader for each department. I've taken a look at the two job descriptions and separated out the roles. And so the first one before you tonight is the human resources position of assistant superintendent, which will allow more focus for both classified and certificated employees in terms of time, bargaining, working through individual issues, particularly in a post-COVID environment that we think we know about today that is likely to change in the next few years. And so the recommendation of the superintendent is to approve the job description so we can look for a well-qualified candidate.
Okay, thank you. I do see a couple of hands up for public comments on this. So let's begin with Abby Corman again.
Hi, I'm wondering if AFSCME and SDTA were included in the writing of this job description. And for me, more importantly, if the Equity and Diversity Council was included in the creation of this job description. And then also moving forward, if they can, all three stakeholders can be on the hiring committee. And if not, in what ways are or will all of our stakeholders be included in this hiring process, especially if this position, as stated, is the specific responsibilities include recruiting new employees and maintaining them, and all of the employee recognition, progressive discipline. I would hope that stakeholders are a part of, if not this job description, hope they were a part of the job description, and then also that hiring committee, AFSCME, SDTA, and the Equity and Diversity Council. Thank you.
It might be helpful, President Sarver, if I responded to a couple of those. The AFSCME and SDTA representatives were not involved in the job description. That's a district responsibility. The equity portion that we talked about was not in the previous job description. And there are 5 specific bullets that talks about equity, diversity, attracting experienced people in our district that serve underserved communities, that talk about implementing best practices related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that has been covered. And finally, the third comment about will the 2 employee bargaining groups be involved in the interview process? The answer is yes.
Great, thank you very much. And the other hand up I see is Edith Salvatore.
Thank you. Longtime attendees at board meetings will recognize a portion of my comments, which are SDTA's long-held concern about the inflation of the management positions at the district office. This creates one new position. We can forecast a rolling domino effect of other positions that could follow it. As you note in the board background, even at an entry level position, the with driven costs and benefits and provision of clerical support, this position is going to cost the district nearly $400,000. That is a good chunk of change in a district that has many, many glaring student needs. And I was out of town. I have to admit that I was out of town for a few days with a family responsibility and was not immediately available when the superintendent first contacted me about the job descriptions. But as Dr. Schimmel noted, there wasn't an effort beyond one comment to put those job descriptions in front of SDTA. I don't know about AFSCME, to review them. I looked over the HR position when the agenda came out on Friday, and frankly, I don't understand what half of the job responsibilities in there are. It's not a very clear job description, but I'm not the one applying to take it on. I am concerned that the positions had already been posted and advertised, this one on EdJoin and on Leadership Associates website, before the board has taken action to split the position and approve the job description. I don't know. I know that many times in creating and agreeing to contracts, we sort of put the cart before the horse and you all rubber stamp something. But when it comes to creating a $400,000 expenditure for the district, I would hope that the district had the board's approval before that happened. Dealing with the assistant superintendent of human resources is 60% of my job on a day-to-day basis. So it's near and dear to my heart. I hope we can find someone qualified. I'm disappointed that it is happening in this way.
Okay, I think those are all of the comment hands we had up. Carrie, I see your hand is up.
I think I just have one question for you, Barry. Yeah, well, one of our issues is the sub shortage. We also have, it's not just our district, it's statewide, nationally, a shortage of special ed teachers. If our directors of human services had more time, would that also allow the person to network and to sort of really help with some of these glaring issues that we have? I also see the director of human services as really being a support arm for all of our staff, right? And that takes time to meet with people, to have quality conversations, to help with restorative conversations in some cases. So can you talk a little bit more about if somebody's not stretched as thin, doesn't that really help our kids at the end of the day?
Thank you, Board Member DuBois. The answer is yes. You have to put time into it. And you're absolutely right. Recruiting qualified people has become a full-time job. It's almost table stakes. The competition for qualified instructors, qualified administrators, the baby boomer group is retiring, and the groups that come after the baby boomers are not plentiful in the education world, particularly in the Valley, in the Bay Area we work in. So even since I've been here 3 weeks, we have begun to look at some different kinds of things. Traditionally, we advertise in 1 or 2 different areas, and through one of our principals, they asked me, could we advertise on Indeed for a particular kind of teacher? And the initial response that I heard from said, well, we've never done it before. I said, well, let's try it and see what happens. And sure enough, we got a math teacher, and the principal was happy. Students are not having a substitute. And so recruiting for specialty needs like special education, certain bilingual kinds of teachers is going to take much more effort in recruiting than the traditional, let's go to the hiring fair and see what we get. It's going to have to dig deep into who's available and where they might be even outside of education. And so you are correct. Focusing more on our employment needs from what is desired will be a major function, along with getting the diversity, the equity, the particular languages that we need in our district. And just not saying, okay, we're going to put this job up on a board someplace and see what happens. Does that answer your question, Board Member DuBois?
Yes.
Thank you. Shanice.
Yeah. Thank you, Edith, for your comments. So my background is actually social work administration, and many times in many different organizations, they'll ask the question, why one more manager? Why one more admin? We need people on the direct line, the staff line, or something like that. And even though I haven't been a teacher, haven't been in education, but I've been in small districts. And one of the things that I think many people don't understand It's the level of requirements. We are a federal program. We are state funded. We are federally funded, locally funded. It's very complex as a district. We are not a private school. We are not a charter school. We are not these things. We have a lot more standards in which we have to comply with. And as things get more complex, and they are, every time we go to the government for a bigger budget for students and we're fighting and trying to really advocate for student needs, the needs are just complex and our environment isn't changing. 5 years ago, it was different than it is now. So as I think about this role, although I love to see more staff and teachers to make sure our numbers are doing well, we can partner with some of our foundations. But if it is, we don't have certain positions in place to deal with compliance. And I want to say compliance take a lot of time because it's legalities. If we don't do those right, it opens us up for lawsuits and then we pay more money that could have been to the students. And so to me, these two positions really help protect and support our district. I also hear our students talking about teachers are stressed and they need support. Well, if you have an HR person who split, I think of myself as a parent, like I'm thinking about work and I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about that. I'm really not giving my full attention to where the needs are because I have to prioritize between student services and HR. Well, students are important and teachers are important. That's what we've heard all through the pandemic. And so to me, what we're saying is that our district is important, the students are important, and the staff are important. And so that means that we have two positions that will allow us to focus on the anchors of our district, which are our students and our staff. And so when I think of this and when I think of our students saying that they're stressed, it's just a mirror that our staff are stressed. And so these positions are really key for us to be able to respond to our most important stakeholders, which are our kids, right? And our teachers. The students can't be educated without our teachers, and our teachers don't have a job without students. So it to me, those things. So Edith, I hear you about the cart and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what you said. So I totally get that. And I appreciate that comment. I want to keep that in the back of my mind to address that. But these two positions actually might cost us less in the future in compliance issues with families being upset, coming from a community that doesn't always feel or underrepresented communities where they don't feel like they have a place to go. You now have a student services that is focused on those individuals that may need to have a different voice to go to. And so when I think about these two positions, if I said we had two more positions, you come to me, I'd be like, well, I don't know about that. But these two service our school and gets us to the outcomes of our staff, having more customer service towards them, and for some of our students to have more customer service towards them. And since I've been on the board in December, the two things that keep coming up, teachers aren't happy, kids aren't getting what they need. Not all kids are being served, and some teachers' voices aren't being heard, and some staff aren't being heard. Well, that's because you got a person split between two different jobs, and they need to be separated. And so for me, it costs and it's going to pay dividends in the long run. So I'm just going to put that out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
I agree with my colleague, Trustee Stevenson, and quite possibly you said it all. So I might be let me be very brief about this. I think of our staff as being the true strength of the district, and trustee efforts should be made to protect that. And one way of doing that is assuring that we have a very strong lead in the HR position who can focus on recruiting new people and maintaining a healthy relationship with SDTA. So I'm very supportive of doing this, recognizing that HR responsibilities are much greater than they have been in the past. And by breaking off the student services position, we'll be able to find a professional who will do a great job for the district.
Okay, and I'll add in here, on reading these two job descriptions, first the HR one, and then later on when we got the student services, I was struck by two things very strongly. The first was how substantial, complex, and different the job responsibilities were across the two jobs. And that very, very strongly confirmed for me that we were continuing to try to bundle together two different jobs that had become overwhelming and overwhelmingly different into a single job description that was completely out of step with best practices across the state and with staffing at all of our peer districts. The second thing that was very striking to me was how much diversity and equity is recognized and addressed in these job descriptions in ways that have been very much missing in the past, and that they really represent a strong step forward in the claims that the board has been making of intending to see everything through an equity lens in the operations of our district. And so both of those aspects were extremely important and positive to me in reviewing these. And as I really got a chance today to look at the student services one as well, again, it really reinforced and overwhelmed. It's a very different role from the HR role, and it is a very large, complex, demanding role. These two completely different jobs need to be separated and recognized separately. So I'm very happy to see that. And I do see that Rich has his hand up as well.
Yeah, I'll just comment that I think also there's a recruiting issue. We've heard a lot tonight about recruiting challenges, and I understand that finding a person with all of this has been potentially difficult, and both are very important roles. So I support the split out here, but I also want to acknowledge what Edith mentioned and about creep in administrator, and I think keeping in mind ratios of administrative students and staying in line with best practices is important, and not having the creep that Edith fears, which I hope isn't in the plan. I don't think is in the plan, but that this is a split based on finding the right people, since it's going to be two people to do this. And so I support this, and also support keeping in mind appropriate ratios going forward.
Okay, with that, I've heard a lot of positive comments from around the board. Do we have a motion for approval of the Assistant Superintendent of HR?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. So we can move on to the presentation of the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services job description.
Board President Sarver, I think one of your fellow board members, Board Member Stevenson, did the lead in. It was exactly point on. I couldn't add anything to that. I can add that student services has changed dramatically pre-COVID, and we don't have the staff to take care of the needs. Post-COVID, we're in a whole different world. The fastest growing sector in public education is mental health. Students to feel engaged, to feel secure in that, and that role is going to grow more and more post-COVID. And so having somebody that will work with, we're very fortunate to have Mr. Dooley here. I couldn't do what I've been able to do on the HR side without him. and his support because student needs grow by the day. Our family structures have changed, the mental awareness of students, we need much, much more. And so that will do that. And I would also like to suggest, as pointed out by President Sarver, in the job description, under bullet 2 on page, I identified the Redwood City Police Department, and he called to my attention, we actually have more than one city. So I'd like to recommend that the board take out the Redwood City Police Department and call it the Community Police Departments in the area, so that it doesn't single out one, because we do have different communities that reside, and I appreciate that catch.
Okay, and on this, I do see Edith has her hand up again.
And I won't make the same points that I made previously, as you've already approved that job description, and so the job is split. I do have questions, however, about this specific job description. On the first page, maybe halfway into the bullets on duties and responsibilities, there are a couple of bullets about working to employ educators with personal and professional development experience, blah, 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 working to employ multilingual educators. Those seem better placed in the HR job description as student services. While I understand that the greatest service we provide to our students is that we provide them with teachers, the human resources is, in my understanding, better set to employ people than student services is. I also, and again, I apologize if I have missed this, because this job description was added to the agenda late and I didn't get an opportunity to see it until after my teaching day ended today. But I don't see a notice or description of how this position interacts with the Director of Student Services position that we already have in the district, and where the overlap is, which in just glancing at them side by side, there seems to be a bit of overlap, but not hugely perhaps. But where the overlap is in those positions, how they are differentiated, why we continue to need a director of student services if we're going to have an entire assistant superintendent of student services. And I would hope to see that more clearly demonstrated in the job description.
All right, are there, is there some response to that question?
I could respond to that. The Director of Student Services will report to the Assistant Superintendent. The entire Student Services team is going to be less than a dozen people to serve 10,000 students. And the needs are much greater than they have ever been. And while you might consider it repetitive, some of those needs are going to require a diverse group of people to work with students, language needs that are prevalent in our community. And I'm talking about languages past potentially Spanish to address the needs of students, because when you're addressing the needs of students, student services are going to have quite a bit of interaction with parents, and parents will need to be spoken to in a language that they can understand. And I'd also like to suggest sometimes not being familiar with salary schedules, a number can be tossed out. And I feel there's some responsibility on my part that the number that was thrown out is not accurate. It's about 67% of that number. There isn't anybody in the Sequoia Union High School District that total compensation is $400,000. So I wanted to clear that up so everybody's aware of that because we are on camera to the public.
And I'll clarify that that's not what I ever said. I said there's going to be a clerical position that goes with that, and all told, that would make $400,000.
Thank you for the clarification. Are there any other questions that the board might have about the position? And it is likely in the next 5 years that you will be looking at that job description again as our society evolves with schools having a major component of mental health during the K-12 day in the years to come.
Okay, I see that Shawnee's has her hand up.
Yes, one of my questions was equity, but I see it in here now, so I don't have that question anymore. So I want to say thank you for adding equity to all the decisions. I mean, the positions and roles and things of that sort, as it's not one person's responsibility. It is a philosophy as well as an approach and a commitment to equity. And I think as a parent who has interacted with student services on many different levels, whether working with Jared for the reopen way back in the day, and also now as a social worker who's worked with families who have accessed multiple ways of student services, whether it's the McKinney Act, where for the families who are experiencing homelessness or are unhoused, or whether it's the kiddos and I shouldn't say kiddos, sorry, the students who don't have IEPs or 504 plans. I did good, didn't I did, Chris? Students who don't need an IEP, don't need a 504 plan, but they need to access, understand what the mental health support is so that they can access education just like anyone else. And then some of our students who are involved with the justice system who needs to be back, or some of our students who are in foster care. And it's not just for those specialty populations, right? It's also for anyone who needs resources. I know, being new to the board at the beginning, maybe it was the pandemic, got a lot of emails, from families from different geographics, different zip codes, racial backgrounds, who were talking about their kids needing support. And I don't think it was just because of the pandemic. Sometimes the pandemic reveals what it is that's already there that I dealt with privately. And so I think that falls into our MTSS. I think it helps our kids get ready for school. And I think there is a lot of work for our district to do. I think there's been some foundational stuff. Thank you, Jared and the team, around MTSS. But we know that there is, I don't know how to say it, but an uplift, I guess I'll call it that we have to really move forward. And it's not a strategic plan. It is the way that we are supposed to be working with kids and families who need different types of support. In addition to, we have some kids who are gifted and do really well in AP classes, but also have social and emotional needs. And so I just think that this is something that's going to help us move the needle. And I'm really excited about this role because I do think it will interact with our community more. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie.
So I invite you to push back on me with this question as I ask it. But my ideal candidate for this job would be somebody who actually has had experience developing programs and understands how to support foster youth, homeless youth, court-involved kids. Because I believe that if you really understand that group of kids, you can support all high-risk kids. And it would really, it would help move the needle in a big way. So I don't know if I can get this, you can push back on me, but I would love to have that as something we look for.
There is no pushback on that at all. You're absolutely right. Having a candidate that's had some experience with those specific kinds of groups and programs across the state. And even in our own Bay Area, I know several school districts that are really very good at some of those. And the main one, and I was very careful in my wording, design, lead, coordinate, and implement the district's multi-tiered student support system. We have a ways to go in the Sequoia district on that till it's fully implemented. You cannot do that without integrating it with education. Education's our main focus. But if the student has a home condition, has is not eating well, is upset, has whatever kind of problem they might have, that is not going to lead. And I do believe that this person is going to work very closely with our assistant superintendent for education, and whatever approach comes out with our principals, it has to be joint. I'm sure the superintendent will support it, but those two leaders are going to have to work hand in hand, and not two different divisions would be my recommendation to reach all of the needs of the kids. And that's not here today. I think it can develop very quickly because the MTSS is a statewide system. So there are many districts that have 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of us that we can use to narrow the gap, and we can catch up pretty quickly.
Great. Thank you. So I spoke earlier to both of the job descriptions and continue to feel as positively. I appreciate the change of talking about all of our local community police organizations instead, because yes, we need to partner with all of them. I'm reminded that this should be a roll call vote rather than an all in favor. So let's begin with a motion and a second for the student services one, and then we can go back to the HR one. Is there a motion in favor of the student services job description?
So moved.
There's
A
Chris
second.
and Shawnee's. Okay, can we have a roll call on that then?
Student trustee Stood,
She's stepped away for the moment.
student trustee Osuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson,
Yes.
trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Ginn,
Yes.
vice president Dubois,
Yes.
president Sarver.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. And we did have a motion and a second originally for the HR job description. So I think we can use those and go to the roll call.
Student trustee Osuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson,
Yes.
trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Ginn,
Yes.
vice president Dubois,
Yes.
president Sarver.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to 15.3, continuity of learning communication, approval of the contract with Spotlight Education.
Thank you, everyone. My appreciation to Crystal Leach, who will be running the slideshow for us this evening. I get the, in my opinion, most exciting part of this presentation. Jarrett, however, makes it possible because of the work that is being done to keep students and staff in school and to ensure that we have protocols in place to get them back as quickly as possible when they need to be out. I get to talk to you about what are we doing around the questions so related to COVID. Is my kid on track? Is everything okay as far as their continuity of learning? So before we get to me, I first give you the groundwork that makes continuity of learning possible. Jarrett Dooley, take it away.
Thank you. All right. We wanted to take a brief moment of your time and provide an update on our established partnership. You can go ahead and hit that first slide. Thank you. With our wonderful colleagues from Worksite Labs, as we have discussed in the past with the board and our community, we officially kicked off our COVID-19 testing, as you heard from our SDTA rep, Ms. Salvatore, for our students and staff this past Monday at our 4 large school sites. You can see some data in our table here with some information. As you can see, we had just over 100 total tests administered in our first 2 days. As communication continues to spread and more students, parents, and staff become familiar with our registration and testing processes, we should see increases at each of our sites. Also note that, as promised, testing will be expanding on Wednesdays into East Palo Alto Academy in October, as well as adding additional mobile rotations to Tide Academy, Redwood High School, and our Maintenance Operations and Transportation Center. We are also gearing up with our partners on contact tracing and the much needed support role with our health and staff team members, including our school nurses. All contact tracing processes have been initiated, and our teams are finalizing some phone scripts, communication, and final troubleshooting. We are collaboratively working towards the gradual release of this contact tracing and these responsibilities to our Worksite Labs partners, and expecting that to be completed in the coming weeks. As you can see, there's a few photos of our sites, and I'd like to extend some gratitude to the board and Superintendent Dr. Williams for supporting this partnership with Worksite Labs, as well as to our entire health and COVID team members, our site administrators, and our Worksite Lab partners to get these programs up and running in under 30 days. Thank you.
And kudos to that. Bravo. That is impressive. So thank you for making it possible for people to be back with us and to feel safe about that. And that's why I get to dig into a big question that families have had, which is, hey, I've seen things on the news about learning interruption and learning loss. And how do I know that my student is doing all right now that we are back at school? And so we have found a fantastic product that Dr. Williams introduced myself and Dr. Wilmot to, and we both just about passed out. We were so excited about it. So after we recovered with smelling salts, we took it to the IVPs and the principals and the head counselors. The principals were cautiously optimistic. They said, make sure you run it by the HCs. They know this stuff. The IVPs loved it. And then the HCs followed, were really, really excited about it. And I am too. And if I were going to describe this college and career readiness guide in one short definition, it is an individualized student infographic available in English and Spanish, customized to our district specifications, using existing data to tell a story and map a way forward for each of our kids and their families. And attached to the board doc, you had a sample of the guide that they put together for another district in California. This is totally customizable. We'll keep what we like. We'll get rid of what we don't like. We'll give it some Sequoia green. We will put in services that are specific to our schools, supports for students specific to our context. But even this front cover, I love it, because when families get this twice a year in the mail in English or in Spanish based on their home language, it says right at the top, right on the front page, it's personalized to the data of that particular student. And it tells them, go and review your progress on high school graduation. A career in marketing looks like a promising opportunity for you, and it's a specialty at Long Beach. You're eligible for some UC and CSU colleges. Learn more on that. And every kid in the district and their parents is going to get one of these that is specific to them. So on the next slide, and this was my favorite comment from anyone in the process. It was an IVP who said, oh my gosh, I want that taped to my refrigerator. So one of the other pages, or two of the other pages in the document, shows student progress towards district graduation and then towards UC A through G graduation. And the little footprints, and we can even customize them. If we don't want footsteps, we can have something else. They are how close the kid is to fulfilling that requirement. So for instance, in this sample on the document, which is a little hard to see, sorry, at the top, you've got history, and the student gets one complete set of footprints and then a half set because they're a sophomore and they're not a sophomore, they're behind. They have 1.5 years of what they need for that particular graduation requirement. The other thing I like about it is the infographic uses a lot of visuals. So, it's still going to require some literacy for sure, but the fact that it's got icons that might be associated with different subject areas is helpful. For visual learners, it's a fantastic item. Another thing I like about this is if I, for instance, am an AVP and I've had a kid blow out of a class in the last period, they're super frustrated and they don't want to be there, gives me something to talk about that gives them real context. Well, let's look at where you are in your graduation plan, and let's look at your college and career. Like, what do we need to do to get you there? How can I help make it possible for you to stay in that class? And this gives a lot of context to young people who we say over and over again, your grades matter. And it's hard for them to make that connection when they're worried about so many other things like, who am I going to go out with this weekend? So you can do things like high school graduation, UCA through G. Some families have said, we want the reports on the interim assessments because we want to know how kids are doing on an interim basis, because now we've got just the report that comes out junior year on CAFs, that can be put in here. Some other components on other pages that are possible to add. Next slide, please. So this personalizes college choices for each kid. So it looks at you look at the average scores of kids who get into those colleges, where is this particular student at this point? Where are they competitive? Where is it a bit of a reach? And then where do they need to up their game a little bit to be competitive? And something I appreciate about it is it also includes the community colleges. So the 4 green stars, every kid gets 4 green stars for some colleges, even if they have an extremely low GPA or they're not very close to graduation. So it's not it also sends the message to all of our kids that college is for you, which I think is really exciting. So I've got a list there of some of the things it covers. Thank you, that's perfect. And then it also gives a page based on the area where we live. What are the promising jobs in that area? What do they pay on average? And what kind of a degree do you need in order to be somebody who would be considered for that job? I can't tell you how many times I'd have a kid in my office and I'd say, what do you think you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a doctor, right? And they've got a 1.4. And so to give kids a visual of what it might need to look like for them to get where they need to go. It also allows them to take a survey on the sorts of careers that might be interesting for them. And then there's a video for each of the areas where they test high about what it's like to have a day, be a day on the job in that particular career. And then this is my second favorite part after the footsteps. It's got action steps. So it doesn't leave any kid hanging. So they can go here and look at what are the next things that I need to do based on my current graduation requirements met, my current GPA, my current A through G eligibility to get where I need to go. And we'll be able to customize this for our district. So we'll be able to put things in like the resources that we have on our campus to help students meet those different goals in their lives. So these are some of their current partners. We've heard great things about them. Something else that I appreciated about them was that they had a survey from West Ed, that West Ed, an external organization they hired, did of over 1,000 families, and then the students in those families who had used the product. And 94% of them said that they would like to have it again. And 75% of the students said that they had taken some action from the contents of this survey. So what are our next steps? If this is approved tonight, I have started to put together, in the hopes that it will be, a district template design team to solidify what will the content be for our district. And that needs to be an array of stakeholders. I'd love to have a board member. So I've got head counselor volunteers, I've got IVP and principal volunteers. Edith is going to round me up some SDTA volunteers. So we want to make sure we got a lot of different set of eyes on this. We'll then need to design the template together. And then we'll need to make sure that we match the data to the template. For better and for worse, this is really going to point out some errors for us, because hopefully we'll catch them all before we get there. But families are going to be able to see very clearly if we've got something incorrect on a data form and to ask questions about it to help us out with that. We'll create some sample student examples to run through as many iterations as possible to catch everything that we possibly can before our first run out. And then make the needed changes, train our staff on what to do with these documents. So just like we had staff development on paper, the online tutoring program for kids, where staff went through and now they know what they can look at in the paper template to see how many kids are using the product, how to get kids there when they need help. We'll do that sort of training with staff again, so they know how they can use this conversationally with students. When we were talking about it in the head counselor meeting, they were like this, of how they could incorporate it into their meetings with their students. And then we will send a hard copy to each family in their designated home language, in English or in Spanish. We have families who do not speak English or Spanish. I know this contract covers English and Spanish. We can add additional languages. It would cost a one-time cost of $2,000 for each additional language if we wanted to add more languages. But right now the contract you see is for English and Spanish. And then the soft copies in English and Spanish that are sent home in the mail will be available to students, families, and staff for ongoing use, and they'll get that twice a year. That's it for me.
Okay. All right, I see a whole bunch of hands up. First of all, look for public comments. I see one hand up from an attendee, from Jennifer Carson. All right, we're going to be able to let Jennifer give us comments.
You should be able to speak now, Ms. Carson.
Hi there, how we doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. Mine is short and sweet. I love it. It should be very helpful for us. For me, it's really important that we do mail hard copies home to our families. I think it is our current practice that we are not actually mailing home report cards. And this is hard. It's hard because that's what people expect. And so there are definitely still people who do snail mail. There are definitely still families that want that piece of paper in their hands. And so if we can make sure that's included, I'm on board. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like our only attendee comment. So let's go to Chris.
Okay. So 2 thumbs up for me as well. I think the product shows great promise and an important place for us in the district. I want to provide a tiny bit of context for my opinion on this, which goes to sort of 12 years on the board and the recognition that the half-life for any statement we hear at the board meeting is probably just 1 week. But Bonnie, there are probably 2 times. I think you qualified for me with a longer half-life than that. But the one I want to point to is something Alice Clayman said, probably Alice Clayman, who was the head counselor at MA many years ago, pointed to the fact that counselors in California public schools have been cut dramatically over the past 20, 30 years or something like that. And so much so that I think the efforts of good college and career counselors is focused particularly on 11th grade. And the place we cut short or have to in the past is 9th and 10th grade. And things can happen early that affect the career trajectory of students and can have a substantial impact. And so for me, the $35,000, $38,000, if you get one student whose career trajectory is changed by that, it'll have a bigger impact than this. So this is a no-brainer for me. I also think that we should look seriously at adding additional languages at $2,000 a piece is really a minor expense. The only other thing, I'm certainly going to vote for this. The only other thing I want to suggest is that we don't consider this over-promising on how much. I think we could probably communicate a lot in graphic communication like this. It won't be the same as a good college counselor, a good career counselor working with someone. That said, I think it's going to fill a really important gap for us. So I'm very pleased to see it go forward.
Yeah, Chris, the comment from the counselors was, oh my gosh, we've been doing mail merges of the most important information here, but it's haphazard and there are no visuals and nothing replaces a quality college counselor, nothing when it comes to really understanding your opportunities for college after high school. And Alice, the college and career counselor at MA, who worked literally would answer emails at 3 a.m. tirelessly to that end. And this piece of paper won't replace that. But the counselors felt like it would do a lot to help them to continue to get the message out there to families.
Thanks. Shawnice.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest, Bonnie, I didn't know what this was when I got it. That was just why you got like 100 questions. So thank you. Like, I'm sure it was at 3 o'clock in the morning when you got one of my emails. And I was like, oop, I forgot to put a verb in there. She doesn't know what I'm talking about. So thank you for answering all my questions. So I felt like I was prepared. I actually went and watched a video and all that good stuff because I'm a visual learner. So I wanted to auditory. So first thing I wanted to say is, what is HC? The HCs were so excited, you said.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Those are the head counselors.
Oh, okay. I was like, who is that? Who's that? I was like trying to Google it. I was like, who is that? Okay, anyhow.
I'm, by the way, married to somebody who says you use so many acronyms, you don't even know it. And I do not.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, the board meetings.
I want to agree with Trustee Thompson, about the language. One of the things I'm learning, I'm with a group of parent leaders at MA called Families at the Table, from different components of whether it's the foundation or whether it's the 49er, trying to figure out kind of how to engage families. And one of the things that has come up is that all families need engagement, need information. So I think that this is universal. But the other piece around home language that I'm learning even with my organization is that specifically some of our Pacific Islanders, we still have families who are new immigrants to our community. And even though they may speak English, that may not necessarily be true in written. And so I want to encourage us to, I don't know where this belongs, Bonnie. We may need to re-ask the home language question. I'm learning that people don't always answer those questions because they actually don't think it makes a difference, or I'm supposed to speak English and understand English, therefore I'm going to say English, when in actuality, you may want things in other languages. And I assume Chinese, because I was looking at our statistics of the number of Chinese families that are moving in our area, but also Tongan and all that. So, and then what do we do for families that it's a one-off, right? Like Arabic speaking or something like that, just to have a plan for that. So I wanted to put that out there because Anna Matangi, they talk a lot about it, which is our Pacific Islander organization in East Palo Alto, but also there's a rising group of Pacific Islander families at MA that have been meeting. And then the other thing I wanted to ask to comment on, this visual is actually very important for children who have neurodiversity or learn differently or visual learners. I think that would have helped me and my child have a lot better relationship about how important school was at the in their freshman year, to have a path that we can like watch. So I'm happy about that. The other piece I want to put out there is that we do have a number of families that's not literate in English nor in their home language, or sometimes just English. They grew up here and they know English, but they're not readers. And so I'm wondering, what do we do about those families? And I just want to be cognizant of that, since we do have we're preparing to welcome new immigrants into our community. What does that mean? And then the last piece I wanted to mention, maybe Bonnie, you can answer some of these questions that I have, is that our partners, a lot of our partners in our community are doing college readiness, college track. I think there's a couple of organizations in Redwood City that are doing some stuff, Boys and Girls Club. I know that Dr. Williams, you're going to do a community partner summit, and I'm wondering if this can be a part of that, and how do they get access to it so that they can also support whatever their college or career after high school. And it could be a very good tool for that. And then the last time, I'm so excited. I know it won't change the value of counseling and the academic counselors. I want to say my child went to college because he talked to an academic counselor. Just want to do a shout out to that counselor at MA. And I was so excited about that. And every kid should get a counselor, should get a body and a person who breathes to work with us. But I also know that they're not spending time on the Excel sheet. They're not spending time on those things. And I know as a social worker, as soon as we figured out we got a database that has all these resources, that then my job is not spent putting together sheets of paper to do what it is. It releases back the most valuable piece, which is the person sitting in front of you. So my hope is that this will release some time for people to be their best in front of students. And, and the last thing, are our student trustees going to be able to look at this and give comments as you have the design team?
I would love to have a student trustee on the design team, and I'm sorry that you had to remind me.
Yeah, we would love to help out with that.
Great.
Okay, Carrie.
So if the head counselors like this, I'm excited. So it sounds great. Just 2 comments. If we have a chance to customize this, is this an opportunity to shift our philosophy a bit? As you know, I don't like the constant narrow focus of grades and, the limiting of our kids. So I'm going to share 2 things. I think I've said this before. When Tom Moore was alive, when he knew I was running for the high school district, he said something that has really stuck with me. High school should be a banquet of opportunity for kids. They need to try lots of things to discover who they are. And some kids are lucky, they discover that really early on, like who they are, their talents. But for most kids, it's more of a struggle, right? And so we really need that banquet of opportunities. So it's not just grades, it's not just A through G. If kids are doing sports and they're passionate about that, if they want to be an artist, I hope we will encourage that. We need artists, and artists, they're just so important in our world. So I feel we have been narrow in this district. And you know how I felt about sending grades out every day. And I was the only one who screamed when that happened. And that only added to the anxiety our kids have about grades. So I hope we can kind of focus more on this banquet of opportunities. And also, there are some kids that get C's and they're working really, really hard. And that should be celebrated. Kids who want to go to community colleges, that should be celebrated. And kids who want to go into the trades. all of that needs to be celebrated. I don't want to be so narrow. We're not all the same. So is this an opportunity for us to change our philosophy and really work on being more balanced and more healthy and allowing kids to pursue that banquet of opportunity? And especially, I'm really on fire in this right now because, as you know, I sent 2 kids to music school, and I've heard so many stories of kids being talked out of that.
Yeah.
And I've been through 2 convocations at 2 different music schools where that whole speech was about, we just can't do that. We need artists. So anyway, that's my soapbox, but can we change our philosophy?
You know, one of the things, the only thing actually that gave the IVPs pause was the sample that I gave them and that I gave you tonight. It has quite an emphasis on the SAT and PSAT. And their point was, okay, maybe we need to have that in there, but do we need to emphasize it like that since a lot of the colleges aren't even looking at those anymore? The college and career, the career index will have all sorts of different jobs that students might test into having an affinity for on this. And we can look, I love the stars that it shows. It'll show for every kid options of places where they can go on, but we'll talk, Carrie, about ways that we can build in other measures that support the whole child and encourage the whole child in this document.
Okay, Rich.
So I have one area, I guess I'll call it of concern or question, and that is how many different logins will parents and students have? Because I think there's already Canvas and there's already Naviance. Will this be a third thing? And are there more than those 3, or is some of those other things going away if we add this?
So I don't have an answer to that question, but I will get one. My assumption was that this was a PDF that we would email out to families. So it's not another login. We would just email it to them twice a year.
And it seems like a lot of overlap with what I believe Naviance provides. So we'll be not using that anymore. It just seems like it's going to be confusing if they're sending things that are very similar to each other, but not the same.
They'll speak to the same data. They'll pull from the same data for results or for information for families. But the comment that has been made about Naviance is that it's very useful for filling out your college applications and that whole process, but it's not very user friendly, especially for a lot of our families, like you just spoke to, who don't do well with the logins, to have to go there and try and access that.
Okay, well, just to the extent that can clear up any confusion, if you have Naviance, which is saying one thing, and then this comes from this district in a PDF that's saying something different, that'll be confusing. So I don't know, just be thoughtful of how you address that.
Got it.
Isabel.
I could kind of speak to like the Naviance thing, because I will say as a Naviance user, it's incredibly complicated and glitchy, and also does very little with like telling you careers. And what I was liking is it showing like career salary and growth. Naviance does none of that. And it's really just for like requesting your letter of apps and sending out your applications. And so I think this would be a great kind of supplement to Naviance, because it really fills in, from what I've seen, where Naviance lacks. So I think it's a great thing. And I also think it'll kind of help show people that, you know, if you got 1 C, your life isn't over, and kind of calm people down.
Yeah.
Dr. Olms, you had your hand up briefly. Are you still?
Yeah, I was just going to address the opportunity for us to expand our mindset just about post-secondary opportunities. And so by customizing these reports, one, they're individualized to the student. And when a parent or a guardian receives this report of the students, it actually gives them resources they can access in the community, as well for additional support for internships, for employment possibly. So we can customize these based on the interest of our students at large. And so that's a great opportunity. And then also just wanted to add that it's an opportunity for us to expand on our career pathways and the progress that our students are making. And so I do appreciate the reminder for us to make sure that we're not sending conflicting information. And I also appreciate the opportunity, and I've said opportunity 5 times now, but appreciate the fact that we can send information multiple ways, and so that it may reach parents differently and it may ground their understanding differently depending on how they access the information and also their needs. And it serves as a reference point in terms of the programs that we offer here within our school district. So thank you for that question, Trustee Dubois.
Isabel and Shanice, you have your hands up, but do you have something, Shanice, to add?
I was gonna say, I know we just got this guide, so we'll, when I say this guide, I'll read it. It's just the College and Career Guide First Edition, which I gave comments on. And now we have this, so we'll be able to get both of these things together so that they can navigate, people can navigate what they need to navigate based off that information. I wanna, I didn't think about this. I remember, Jared, if you remember this, back in the day, we talked about in the reopen about, the opportunity because of COVID, being able to, as we come out, do personalized education a little bit more. Maybe not the whole district, but like on some components of it. And I just want to say thank you all for trying to come up with that challenge. I don't know if you guys did that on intentionally or just because y'all just smart folks. But like people really believe that public schools can't personalize and we can do some level of personalization. So I wanted to thank you for that because it just hit me in that moment like, oh my God, my kid is getting some personalization in a system that said that it couldn't. And so thank you for that.
So I wanted to throw in a handful of comments that I shared with Bonnie when I read through this initially. And my first thought was that I feel that this is in line with what our counselors have all long been trying to do, that this is the way they want to talk to our students. This is the way they're guiding our students to be looking at their pathway through high school toward post-secondary life, but that this is just a great graphic tool, a great organizing tool, a great personalizing tool that really is going to put all of that information together accurately, completely, currently, in a very easy to access format and get it in everybody's hands. I also was struck that, there was a lot of overlap and complementary functionality to what's in Naviance. But I was also struck, as Shanice just raised, that this came to us at the same time that the SUHSD career guide was presented to the board. And I really kind of sat down and read the two of the documents together back and forth. And I found that they are extraordinarily complementary, that the career guide that we've developed, and my huge compliments to Tiffany Burkle and her team in the CTE department, that it's a great overview of the kinds of pathways, the kinds of career entry point development that exist in the district, and a way to be looking forward to what's out there and how can you grab onto your passion and really immerse yourself in it. Whereas this college and career report is really a way of monitoring your pathway forward and bringing forward where you're doing really well, what your opportunities are that are opening up, where you need to focus some attention to get back on track, what you want to go and focus on with your counselor. So I really find it to be a great complementary whole, and I am as excited and enthusiastic as the other board members on this. I don't want to push anybody else out of the way, but I am happy to be a trustee that participates in the development process. Please tap me on the shoulder to participate. But if anybody else feels abused being nudged out of the way, don't be and speak up. Also, I want to follow up on the enthusiasm that various board members have mentioned about adding additional language translations into the package. And I would propose that perhaps we consider approving this with a modification to add additional languages that serve substantial populations, not to exceed another $10,000, say, at this juncture. So I kind of pass that around to the board for head nodding, and if somebody
Or
might want to.
maybe you just ask, how many would you want? As opposed to just us making up a number of 5.
Bonnie, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I was thinking I need to go back and look at this year's home language results. I know that it wouldn't be more than 5. I can work with Dr. Williams to determine a percentile cutoff for the number of languages we would translate it into. And then Shawnee's, to your point, we'll come up with a plan for making this accessible to families who are not in that top 5.
So maybe up to 7.
So
isn't it within the superintendent's area of discretion to do that? I think she has heard from all of us in support of the idea. Do we need to give additional instruction, or will she have the latitude to do that on her own? And I'd favor the latter.
I have it as long as it's approved. With the modification, yes, not to exceed an additional $10,000, I would have that leverage because this takes me over the threshold. Yes.
Okay, that's fair. With that, is there a motion for approval?
I move to approve the motion as our president has amended.
I'll second.
Okay, can we have a roll call on that then?
Student trustee Stitt,
Yes.
student trustee Osuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson,
Yes.
trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Ginn,
Yes.
vice president Dubois,
Yes.
president Sarver.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. Okay, let's move on to 15.4 then. Consideration of adoption of resolution number 1696, sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials. We had a public hearing on that and we made comments. Does anybody have any additional comments at this point, or is?
Could I suggest a 5-minute break, Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, let's wrap this one up. I think it'll be very quick and then we'll go to that. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay. All right, I think we had Chris and Shawnee's. I think we had Chris and Shawnee's. Can we have a roll call then, please?
Student trustee Stitt,
Yes.
student trustee Osuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson,
Yeah.
trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Ginn,
Yes.
vice president Dubois,
Yes.
president Sarver.
Yes,
Resolution adopted.
thank you. All right, let's go for a recess of about 5 minutes. Try and be back at 38 past. All right, well, I think we're back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. And we're ready to power through here to 15.5, second reading and adoption of Board Policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements.
All right, everyone, welcome back. And many thanks to those of you who reached out for clarification when you got your board packets. I am very grateful. During our last board meeting, I brought to you a request from Redwood that we update the board policy in 6141.1 to reflect the fact that we had taken what is listed in board policy 6142.7, which says that students who are, older than 16, have been in the 10th grade at least once, can be waived permanently from the PE requirement, and that we go ahead and make that a practice in our district, that that's something that we would do. And Rich picked right up on that theme and said, Trustee Jen, and said, I would like for us to make sure that we are having all of our policies align with our current practice. Are there other places in here where policy is not aligning with current practice? So after the change was made, the Alan Sarver clause was made, and we changed the word may to will in the PE requirement, I was charged with going back and finding any other place where practice didn't match with policy. And that is what you have before you this evening. And there were changes made in 5 places. I'm going to do the last one because it's completely inconsequential, but I'm very glad it got cleaned up. There were 2 words that were written. Well, there was a phrase, 2-word phrase that was written, and then it was the first word and the first half of the second word were repeated. So that was strictly editing so that we look professional. Thank you, Alan Sarver, for helping me. So enough with that one. The other 4 were to do what we were charged with doing at the last meeting. So the first thing that we did was we simplified the language for the math graduation requirement. And that actually was not to align policy to practice so much as it was just that in one of the conversations I had, it was suggested to me that these were wordier than they needed to be. And so we worked on simplifying what that verbiage was and came up with what you have before you this evening for your consideration for adoption. The next one was that the board policy said, as it should, that students needed to have 1 year of a lab course. However, a few years ago, we stopped offering advanced integrated science, and we moved to a system based on the outcomes of our differentiated assistance team's findings, where we said we are going to place all students into freshman biology or a UC A through G science class and see what that does to student outcomes at the freshman year. It was quite successful. And so we've done that for the 2 years since then. What that has caused is, and it's a great cause, it means that because our students still have a 2-year science requirement, they're automatically, because we only offer classes that are UC A through G labs for students who are on the college diploma track, they're automatically taking 2 years of a lab science. So I went ahead there and I updated the policy to reflect the practice. And I added in grandfathering language, because for students who graduated when AIS was a graduation requirement, that's not the case. AIS was not a lab science. I think I see a hand from Edith. Do you want me to take questions now or when I'm done? I kind of prefer to take them now.
As you wish.
Okay.
Is that a public comment or is that?
It's a question on the science.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We actually have discussed this in SCTA at Sequoia, and we're going to bring it up at the consult meeting, that there have been some confusion in the communication of the 2-year lab science and some specifics around 1 year of life science and 1 year of physical science and what classes qualify for each. And so I was wondering, in hearing you talk about the grandfathering language, if that if it is possible that that also applies to students whose case manager scheduled them into classes that don't currently count in both of those. Like, we had a bunch of students who took biotech thinking they were getting their second year of lab science, but they're both biology and biotech are life science. And there's a big concern now that those students are going to have to do a third year. And
They are not, because what we clarified was that in the college, in our board policy and in the college, in the graduation minimum requirements, it says that students for the state of California, it says that students have to have life and physical science. But then in the sub phrasing with more details on that policy, and I called and got it confirmed, they don't have to be two separate classes. So for the UC A through G, well, they don't actually have to have, well, that's a different story. Let's go with the CSUs. For the CSUs are the only people who say it has to be a year of life and it has to be a year of physical. Everybody else is okay with it being intermingled as long as kids are getting both. So we are okay there. I will not lie to you. There was some panic when we realized, oh my goodness, not everybody took AIS anymore. And so now not everybody automatically meets that requirement, because AIS is a survey class that automatically hits both, but we're okay there. That got resolved yesterday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. All righty, and then moving on to social studies. This was another one where we updated our policy to reflect our practice. So in the past, we had a number of students who were unable to take a freshman year of life skills / world studies. So as you'll recall, for a long time in this district now, kids have had 1/4 of life skills, and then they had 3/4 of world studies 1 and 2. It was all social studies, but only 2/4 of it, one semester, counted as meeting the social studies our social studies requirement only reflected, even though it was a 3/4 class, that kids needed to have 5 units of that 3/4 class. We are now moved on from that situation. All students are now taking our freshman year social studies class, which is now ethnic studies, which was approved in October of 2020. But we hadn't updated the social studies graduation requirement to reflect that. So now we've updated the number of units, because now all kids can take that class as freshman year. So there won't be a huge group of kids who've got that random quarter. And so now it's updated to say 37.5. And again, the resulting grandfathering language, that is as of this year's class, which is the graduating class of 2025, that is the change. Prior to that, it's still students with 35 units in social studies for graduation. And then we also did a little bit of cleanup there, because it says in a few of them, for instance, it says US history and culture, or sorry, I've got to pull it up again. Anyways, the language that we had didn't match the title of the course. So we shortened them so that it now matches the title of the course, so that is now more clear. And then I already talked to you about the change we made in Redwood PE, which we talked about a lot last time. And we have changed the may to will.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, we have 2 attendee with their hands up, Abby Corman and Jennifer Carson.
Hi, this is Abby Corman, teacher at MA. I'd like to commend the district on changing this policy. It provides access to a diploma for some of our most marginalized students, and I've heard from Redwood staff that this was a need and a very good thing. I'd also like to commend the district in looking at other places in that policy to make that needed to be changed to make sure it matches our practice as suggested by Trustee Ginn. I hope that we can continue looking at more ways to increase access for our students, particularly by changing policy. Changing policies is one of the most strategic ways I believe we can make sure our schools are equitable and inclusive, and that the best practices we see at our sites that serve all of our students live on after a specific person has left a specific job. I'd like us to look at other areas we're able to change policy to increase educational access for students and provide us more useful insights on how to serve all students better. For a few examples, we could and should have a policy that ensures our families receive report cards in the mail, as I believe I just heard my colleague name they're no longer being mailed home. We could and should update our very old EL master plan that references the extinct California high school exit exam to focus on the relevant and timely needs of our English language learners through changing policy. We could and should change the language we use to describe and analyze data, as Trustee Stevenson has suggested a lot, and look at disaggregated data by zip code as a practiced policy. And we could and should change policy to include our Equity and Diversity Council on all hiring committees, especially as we begin hiring for an assistant HR position. Again, thank you for making sure this access is ingrained into policy to live on past Principal Ogden at Redwood. And I'm wondering if there is or can be an intention to review other policies such as those that I named or others. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jenna.
Hello. Thank you so much. You all know how much I love policy. Good job, everybody. I have two very nitty-gritty things to ask about. One, I want to make sure that the dynamic ecology program that was piloted at MA a couple years ago is also in this grandfathered language. Again, those kids did not choose dynamic ecology. It was put on their schedule as part of a pilot program. They've completed 2 years of science, and I hope that's good enough for their graduation requirement. And
It
the second-
is.
Oh, good.
It is. The dynamic ecology was a survey class, so they're totally fine. And the grandfathering verbiage is for the year, not the specific class, so we're good.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then the other one is, again, a little bit of nitty gritty. If we change that social studies, again, I'm not a guidance counselor or a school counselor, but I do focus on graduation like my life depends on it. And like these children's lives depend on it. So changing the freshman requirement to 7.5 credits instead of the 5 credits does have ramifications for lots of kids regarding summer school and edgenuity. So I really want to make sure that's aligned as we move forward, because right now, the kids normally have to do 1 semester of making up World Studies 2. If we are also going to count the little second quarter 2.5 credit class as a graduation requirement, that's not trivial. That will actually require some kids to either take it in summer school, a 2.5 credit class, different than the 5 credit class, and or some kind of alignment with edgenuity. So just want to make sure we get that taken care of. And there will certainly be kids affected by that.
Yeah.
As much as I hope every single one of them passes the first time through.
Thank you, Jenna. We'll have that all set for next summer, just in case we need it.
We probably won't, but.
I see Chris's hand up first.
Okay. Bonnie, thanks for that cleanup. It looks really good. I appreciate the may to will change. I did, and the 3 3/4 courses in social studies, I think, was very consistent with the intent of what the board passed a couple of years ago. I do want to ask about the beginning of that number 4, the 3 3/4 courses in social studies. just to see if others understand what that means, because I found that hard to reconcile against the list that follows. And the list that follows, I'm in total agreement with and understand well, but ultimately it looks to me as if there are 5 courses there. There are 2-year courses, there are 2 semester courses, and there are 1 3/4 courses listed. And I wonder if, I found the description of 3 and 3/4 courses in social studies confusing, but maybe that's just me.
The arithmetic works for me.
Because you add the 2 semester courses together to become
Like
3.
1 year.
1 year.
But it's not 3, it's not actually 3 courses.
It's 3 3/4 years.
If it's clear to everybody else, then fine. It just was hard. It looks to me as if it's 5 courses that happened to be made up of
Chris, we could
2
fix
1-year
it by,
courses, 2 semester courses.
I could
and
call it,
1
we could call it 3 3/4 years of social studies.
Or would it suffice to just say 37.5 units?
I don't think there's any harm in changing the courses.
If it's
to your
not
years.
confusing to others, then there's no need to follow up on this.
I would actually recommend that we change it to years. I think that's more clear. And if the goal is to be as clear as possible, we might as well.
I guess I'm waiting for feedback from others.
Yes, I think 3 3/4 years is clearer, but maybe just saying 37.5 units gets that done. That would be the clearest, I think, just saying 37.5 units and not having any reference to anything else, but I don't have a super strong opinion. I agree, it's a little confusing.
I think the 3 3/4 years is kind of plain English speak. It's, as you're going into it, you're not counting units, you're counting how many years you're going to spend in the classroom.
Well, can I ask you this, Mr. Sarver? 3 modifies what?
3 3/4 years is what it's talking
But the word that follows is courses.
about. Yeah, and
But
that's
it's
the
actually
that's the
referring
change
to-
we're talking about making. Is to call it years instead of courses there.
Okay.
To alleviate that confusion specifically.
Got it. And I hate to do wordsmithing at this level with the board, but it was just confused in its current form.
Well, this is going to be a guidance counselor question. I'm remembering some of the decisions we make here have been a nightmare for them to explain to parents and kids, right? Will this be a nightmare or no?
I mean, I don't want to speak for head counselors because I have never been one, but I will tell you that it makes a lot more sense when your kid is in a class for 3/4 for that to be reflected in their graduation requirements. The purpose here is to make their jobs easier. I think that we have. And I would recommend going with Chris's suggestion because he's right. It's not courses, it's years. Because American government and American econ are 2 separate courses in 1 year.
Yes, I'd say the wording we want is years of social studies. But so, okay, Dr. Williams.
In addition to just clarifying the language, also knowing that moving forward, we will institute policy bulletins. So the board is setting a direction in terms of the what, and then the how. We will actually create policy bulletins to explain to the school sites and to staff how the policy is to be implemented and the guidelines along with visuals. So that is to come to help to better clarify our policy memos.
We do have an attendee.
Yeah, I saw that Principal Crane had his hand up briefly. And then I guess disappeared. I don't know if he got booted off for having his hand up. I hope not. So I'll go ahead. To me, first of all, this represents, some careful iterative work. The work was done to clean up one thing and then another thing and then another thing and take in some feedback and get it cleaner. And the result that we have in front of us is the cleanest and most intuitive and most accurate version of this that we've seen. And I think we've put a really important focus on this kind of work of aligning policy with practice. And as has been commented, that means looking at other policies and trying to clean up and trying to make sure the intention is more clear and using policy when intentions change. But then also evaluating the policy against the practice and look at the places where discrepancies indicate that practice has not yet aligned with the intention of the policy, or the policy has fallen out of step with best practice as we've moved on. And each are opportunities for continuous improvement. I think as we are more rigorous in this alignment, it will give us an ongoing opportunity for a lot of continuous improvement. We need to be sure that we're not wasting any time beating up ourselves or others when we find a discrepancy, but that we just embrace that opportunity to clean up both our policy and our practice and be stronger at what we do. So a lot of what we saw here was that there were opportunities for confusion, for people having different concepts of what it meant, and also a risk of some students being trapped by practices that were changing over time as policies changed. And I think you've done a really good job here of catching all of that and cleaning it all up. So I'm very pleased, not only with all of this effort, but specifically with the outcome. I like what we see here. I've heard very positive feedback from everybody and a little bit of last minute wordsmithing. And I don't see any other hands up, so I would welcome a motion of approval.
I'll move approval with the change recommended by Chris.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call?
Student trustee Stead,
Yes.
student trustee Osuna,
Yes.
trustee Thompson,
Yes.
trustee Stevenson,
Yes.
trustee Ginn,
Yes.
vice president Dubois,
Yes.
president Sarver.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you.
Principal Crane is back. I'm sorry, he missed his comment time.
So Ralph, we saw your hand go up and then shortly after that, you disappeared from the session. We were wondering whether maybe Zoom booted you off for raising your hand.
I just got a text and he has a good point. Well, we can clarify it.
He is back.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
If we can let him speak. Oh, he disappeared again.
No, he's at the top.
Oh, he's here. There you are.
I'm sorry.
Okay. That's
Thank
okay.
you.
You're being promoted and moved around.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my question is, if we're increasing the social studies requirement to 37.5 credits, doesn't that by default increase the total graduation credits to 212.5? That's the math person in me. So you have to take 2.5 credits away from somewhere else if you want social studies to be 37.5 and keep the graduation requirement at 210.
He's correct.
Yes. my math degree is still working.
So it just means that we need to decrease the number of elective units. So we decrease the electives. No, Carrie, it doesn't change what kids are taking. It doesn't change what kids are taking. We were giving them elective credit for social studies.
Okay.
So there we're not taking, we are not taking them out of electives. We're not taking them out of electives.
Just show my face.
Yeah, we're cleaning up the language. So what we've been doing matches the policy. This is not a change to electives in actuality. They've been sitting in social studies classes for 3 quarters, and when they've applied to colleges is accepted as 3 quarters of social studies where they accept quarters. So it's not taking away from band or any wonderful things kids get to do.
So do we need to reapprove with that change,
Yes.
Alan?
Well,
I move to approve with the change Chris suggested and the change Principal Crane suggested.
So thank you for that. It doesn't say anywhere in this policy what the total number of credits is. And it also doesn't say what the total number of electives is that students need to take. So I'll go back and find that policy and bring that to you next time.
Excellent.
okay. So we stand as approved as it was. Okay. So that brings us to 16.1, comments and committee reports. And Carrie.
Thank you. Just 2 quick things. Several of us were at Redwood's Foundation event, and it was a huge success. They made the most money they've ever made in one event. So it really shows that their foundation has turned around. And I was able to meet many of their partners. So the chef was there from Boys and Girls Club. He helped with the food. I also met the staff person that Boys and Girls Club has put at the school. People were there from Kenyatta College. It was just a wonderful, wonderful event. I'm so grateful for the partnerships, especially Boys and Girls Club, for working with our most at-risk kids. And I heard stories about kids and how they are being just really turned around in their academics, and they're also participating in the Boys and Girls Club and all the wonderful wraparounds that are available. The second comment I have is I'm grateful to our student SAC team. Part of Redwood City 2020, I'm learning a lot about what the Welcoming Redwood City group does. And one of the things that they participate in is a week which is called United Against Hate. And they asked if I would reach out to our students to see if they would hang posters to try to promote this idea of a week where we all stand against hate. So thank you so much to the students who have offered to hang posters at their school sites. There's also a lot of other wonderful things that will be happening that week. And I'll update you on some of those other things later. Thanks.
Shanice.
Yes. I lost my train of thoughts. I don't, I'm still learning the board. So President Sarver, you tell me where this belongs. But I wanted to make some comments based off some of the things that I was hearing today about the report cards and them not being sent home. I'm not for sure if this belonged on the agenda or I'm just having some questions around that. I've actually had people reach out to me about report cards. And so just thinking about the vastness of the diversity of our kids and their access to Canva and Infinite Campus and just all these different methods. Even though paper, we don't want to waste paper, but we look at paper, especially when it's coming from schools. And so hopefully that can be a conversation or at least an update or something about that. And does the board vote on that? Was that a decision made before I got on board? Like, I'm not for sure. And if it's a misunderstanding, fine. But wanted to learn a little bit more about that. I also wanted to comment about Redwood, and I actually had a conversation with a young lady the other day trying to figure out what school she wanted to go to, and really wanted to graduate. And we talked about Redwood. And one of the things I said, hey, they have, Kenyatta's working with them and colleges. It really, it's personalized education for you. It's a small group of people. And there were so many things she didn't know what things were being offered at Redwood. And so as we think about, I bring this up as a district, as we think about our district, to really start thinking about how do we really highlight the beautiful things that all of our sites are doing, because students and families don't know. Specifically, Redwood, sometimes it has a stigma to it because they think of it back 20 years ago or whatever, how long it's been there. And so I just wanted to bring that up. And I know people are wanting to work more with our district. So I just wanted to put those two things out there. So thank you.
Okay, and I'll throw in, I was also able to attend the Redwood Foundation event. And first of all, it was fabulous to take the tour and see the different classrooms and CTE pathways set up, to get a tour of the garden and see the work that's really getting going in transition there, to see the strength of the foundation really growing, the presence of so many of our partners that just makes a huge difference. And for me, it turned out to be quite a great networking opportunity. I was able to join conversations about Sequoia District articulation with the community colleges, and about pathways, career pathway articulation with the local business community. And both of them, I think, were conversations that really set up good working relationships that are going to move those things forward. Similarly, I've been enjoying going around to the different back to school nights. Talked about that earlier, that really the themes around student support and wellness and health and standards-based learning and mastery really dominated the conversations at all of the schools. And that, as well as the graduation policy conversation we just had, really gives me a warm feeling thinking back on a question that former trustee Alan Weiner raised repeatedly during his time on the board, which is, how do we really see the policy work we do at the board reflected in the classroom? And I think we are seeing more and more of that, that the ways that we have been working to ensure our schools are operating this year, and the ways that we have been working on as a board are truly being evident in the classroom, in the students' relationship to the schools, in the way the schools present themselves to the community, and in the ways that the community is engaging with the schools. And I find that to be extremely heartening and exciting. And it's a reassurance of the importance of continuing to do the work well to get there. Also, I've been continuing to get out for first visits to football games. And last week, or this past weekend, I got out to a Saturday afternoon game at Carlmont. I initially went by there Friday night because that was what I had on my calendar for the game. But there was no game going on. So I went back and rechecked the Carlmont calendar and saw that it had been moved to Saturday. When I attended the game and spoke with the vice principals that were present, they informed me actually that it had been moved first from Friday to Thursday because there are substantial limitations on availability of officiating crews in the current pandemic environment. There are fewer officials going around to all the schools, and the work is in some ways more challenging. And then so it was moved to Thursday to try to accommodate that. And then there were COVID issues with the athletes, and it had to be moved back to Saturday, waiting for clearance for some of them to play. And they were barely able to do that. Apparently, they were informed by the CCS leadership that if Saturday didn't turn out to be viable, there could be an officiating crew available on Monday instead to complete it, which wasn't necessary. The thing that I came out of it with, though, is the amount of flexibility and creativity that our staff is bringing to give that sense of a return to normalcy on our campuses is just immense. The work that's going on to make things be as familiar and comfortable and normal as possible is a huge effort. And we can't ever overlook how hard everybody is working to achieve that. We've seen tonight that our schools look astoundingly close to normal under the circumstances. And it's because astoundingly good hard work is being done to make it be that way. And I want to once again share my appreciation with our staff that's doing all of that. So with that, ask whether any of our board members have future agenda items. Now, Shawnee's did raise the idea of a discussion about communications with families, report cards, et cetera, and mailings. Is that something that multiple board members would like to see be an agenda item?
I propose that we first have it as a in the weekly update.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, decide if it merits a agenda item or if the weekly update covers it. Is that okay with you, Shanice?
That's okay. I just also want to make sure we bring it back, maybe back to the public, just whatever the outcome is from the weekly report, if we're still having the report cards or not, just because I've gotten a couple of communications around it. But
Okay, does that work for everybody? Okay, excellent. Any other suggestions?
Yes, I don't know whether this should be an agenda item or maybe an update in our weekly report. A community member asked me to find out, so the new legislation was passed because of COVID. If kids wanted to repeat a year, they should be granted that request. And a community member asked if we could get information on how many of those requests we had and how many of those were granted. So if the other board members agree, is that something that we could have in an update, or should that be an agenda item? Because that was really important legislation, again, for our most at-risk kids. And I think it's sometimes when I'm asked questions like that, we often don't receive that, those types of things. I don't ever see data. And that was very important legislation. So I don't know if others are interested in that. I don't want to take it. I don't know how much staff time that will take. And you can think about it if that's a curveball.
What we can do is provide an update, or we can do a presentation. It just all depends on the board's interest.
I think it'd be a pretty quick piece of data to share out. So maybe we just do it as a very brief presentation next meeting.
Actually, think it as a presentation.
Or
Couldn't
as a-
begin with a report of the number.
Yeah,
And if the numbers suggest the need for a presentation subsequently, I think that would be the most efficient way of going about it.
okay, done. Sounds fine. Other? All right, then I think that brings us to adjournment. Do we have a motion?
Before we do, I do have one question. I'm sorry. I was trying to find my button. The governance calendar, when are we gonna go over that again? And does that need to be agendized sooner?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I got the earphones on the back. I'm like, I need some verbal communication.
Yes.
Okay, yes. What? Like it's on the, I'm sorry, I'm not comprehending. Oh, okay. Are you gonna be putting the governance calendar on this agenda, or is that in the retreat? Like, because we haven't talked about the governance calendar.
Yes, we can put that on the next agenda with the approval from the board. Yes.
Okay, so that's what I would ask for, because I need there's some questions I have around community leadership and all that, but we need to look at the governance calendar.
And I think we've had that on the list to do. So we will agendize that.
Do we need to vote on it?
No, we've already had it on the list, so it's due.
Rich, you looking at me?
I'm supportive. It sounds like it's already happening, but I support it.
Oh, okay, thanks. Okay. I just don't know when.
It's in 2 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
2 weeks.
2 or
I'm
3
sorry.
weeks.
I'm sorry. All this technology, my blood, I can't hear nothing. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Okay. All right. I think with that, we're ready for motion of adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Good night.
Woo-hoo. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Have a good evening.